Welcome back to Masters of Modern. I'm your host, Alex Kessler, here with my co-host, Benjamin Bateman.
What's up, guys? Excited to be here. We're in year 7 of the podcast now, which we missed the 6-year anniversary, whenever that was. I don't exactly know when, but it's right around now. I mean, I think ish. Maybe September. We didn't miss it. Maybe it's in November.
The first episode ever was a primer on Affinity. The second episode ever was the set review for, I want to say, Battle for Zendikar, in which we had Marshall
on. Cons. It had to have been Cons, right?
Yeah, you're right. Sorry, Cons and Tarkir. It was Cons and Tarkir. It was Cons, and I believe Marshall was our guest in the second episode. And then the third episode was Judges Are Your Friends with Leo Morris. And then we had Jules Robbins on, Eugene Wang, because he just won Orlando. And then we had you on. And then the next episode we had Andrew Brown on, and that was the first episode without Glenn.
Yeah. Well, whenever it was, we're in year 7. It's an exciting time to be alive. There are things happening in the world that are exciting. It looks like, obviously, election is behind us, and we're in the between now and January 20th phase of the election now. But whatever it is, it's exciting to no longer be waiting until November 3rd, because it was stressful for everybody to be waiting for that date. And I'm glad that it's not the thing we're waiting for anymore. And it also looks like, based on some of the stuff that happened this week, there will be some sort of vaccine and probably paper magic, hopefully next year. I'm hoping. My fingers are crossed. I miss that stuff greatly. I really, really miss going to GPs, or Magic Fests, as they are, I guess, are now called, opening paper magic packs in stores. Good Lord.
On a tangent on that, I just watched the Queen's Gambit on Netflix over the weekend. Yeah. And if you are a Magic player, which if you're listening to this video and or podcast, you're a Magic player, hopefully. Welcome to a Magic video and podcast for non-Magic players. A game about dragons fighting other dragons. It's a show that takes place in like the 1959 to 1969, basically that like 10-year gap, about a fictional best chess player at that time, like a grandmaster chess player, and it basically is Mad Men meets PTQ grinding. Like like if you are a Magic player who has ever played in Magic tournaments of any variety, there will be weird things that are viscerally familiar. And I didn't know I needed that, but it makes me extremely miss playing live paper Magic in places like, and going to Grand Prix and going to Magic Fests and all of that stuff, but also just like very nostalgic for like turning your paper slip at the end of every round, and like hanging out with people in a hotel lobby after the event, or like you hanging out with a group of people and going over every bad move you made in that last game. Like all of these things happen in this show, and it's like, and then it's like Mad Men. It's all like 1950s, 1960s. Everyone smokes, and it's all this cool style. Highly recommend it.
How was Anya Taylor-Joy?
She's the lead.
Yeah,
she kills it.
Really?
Really
good
phenomenal.
For her. Good for her.
Yeah.
She's somebody who has had like a delayed rise to fame for several reasons. There was a few things that she was involved in that should have been bigger that kind of sucked. Like New Mutants obviously got heavily delayed, and then Glass was not particularly good.
Sure.
But she is somebody who I think is very talented. A couple years ago, I actually got to interview her, and she was a little awkward, but she was a total sweetheart.
Yeah. And she did a phenomenal job. Like
yeah.
I said this on the arc. I get it. The Emmys exist, but she deserves Best Actress award for the year. is an argument that I could make off of this performance.
That's really cool. Yeah, that's something I intend to watch at some point. I might even break my TV versus movie rule.
As a Magic player, I recommend. This is like a show about Magic players. It's about chess, but it's about Magic players.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Which is really cool. Even like the cool guy who like is a chess player, so he's not actually that cool, but he's like a prodigy, but so then he like wears a cowboy hat and wears only leather jackets and has like a side knife and like looks like he thinks he's a movie cool guy, is like a person I've met at Magic tournaments. So yeah, I definitely recommend it. So what we're talking about today, Commander Legends is coming out very shortly. The previews are fully previewed. We have a bunch of cards we want to talk about that are like really, so we're breaking this into 2 parts. So this episode is going to be me and Ben, and we're going to kind of go into just cards that we wish were in Historic or on Magic Arena or in Modern specifically, or Legacy, or what we would maybe do with them in Legacy and Vintage if we can think that far into the past. And just talk about some kind of our favorite things, and then touch upon that. Well, next week we're going to do a big review on like each of the commanders and talk about which commander decks we had built out of them and what kind of they do that's cool and creative. Also next Monday, which is today, so tonight, not even next Monday, tonight at the release of this episode, if this is after that, go watch the VOD. It is on YouTube. We'll be live streaming Commander, playing Commander decks built around the new commanders from this set. So as like a two-parter, that will happen in the following Monday. We'll talk about each commander. Tonight, we're talking about some of our favorite cards from that set. So please make sure to check out the stream if you are watching this right now. It's tonight, 7:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And the first card is not necessarily the highest power level on the conversation we're going to have. It's just one I picked out because I think it's pretty sweet. And it's Forceful Denial. This is 3 blue instant counter target spell. So it's a 5-mana counter spell, but it has Cascade, which like it's very interesting. And partly want to talk about it now is because I want to talk about just Cascade in general, because there's a lot of it in this set. Now, most of it is pretty high CMC. I think actually all of it is. Like I don't know if there's a card in the set that's 4 CMC or below. But a counter spell that lets you Cascade is kind of insane. Like this is in some ways a free counter spell, or a 1-mana straight up counter spell.
Forceful Denial. Okay, gotcha. I was just waiting to pull it up here. Yeah, I mean, a Cascade counterspell I think is interesting, right? I think the scalable nature of these types of cards, they're interesting because in Commander, this card is interesting. In any other format, this card is a little bit more like, The biggest problem with this card is that unless you're playing it as the like 2 or 3 of counterspell in the deck, you never want to flip a counterspell off of a Cascade spell.
Like, I actually think this is... If this was on Arena, I think this card would be historic playable. I think the power level of getting a free spell that's uncounterable, right? Because the way Cascade triggers with this you can hold up for 5 mana. You would only play one of them, and you wouldn't want to play other counter spells, or at least they want to be modal. But like the fact that you can Bloodbraid Elf off of a counter spell on your opponent's turn, I think is not to be discounted. And like,
I think it's okay. That's an interesting point, especially considering if the only counterspell in your deck is Forceful Denial, you'll never flip another Forceful Denial off of a Forceful Denial, which is right.
Or you play with like Archmage Charm, and like your other counterspells could be like Archmage Charm or
Cryptic Command,
right? Like where there's other options available to them.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think that's cool, right? I think there's also the sort of like Living End style deck that you could think of playing this card in, where not necessarily specifically Living End, but having something set up where the thing you're flipping is a little more specific. You're playing a lot of cyclers, things like that. So yeah, it's cool. I don't think it's overtly powerful, but it's interesting.
Even in Modern, like playing Jace, like having this in hand, brainstorming, putting any 4-drop Planeswalker in your deck, or to fairy, even 3 mana, and then just like keeping this up and then countering their spell. How do you deal with that emotionally?
Yeah, that's totally fair.
And the fact that Cascade, the cascaded card that you get doesn't interact with the stack. It's a triggered ability from casting the card, so you can't counter this. So you're going to get 2 spells. So they have to either counter your spell and counter the thing you get. It's just like Cascade is such a powerful ability that like I think it being on a counter spell is not to be discounted.
That's cool. Yeah. I also think you could play this alongside like. Okay, I see where you're going with this. I still think at 5 mana, it's a little chunky, but it's a cool idea. It's definitely a cool idea. Sure. What was that card? See the Unwritten? No, that's not the card. Blue 1. Look at the top 3. Get 1 into your hand, and if you cast it without paying its mana cost, you get all 3.
Yes, I think it is See the Unwritten.
Maybe it's called See the Unwritten.
Mark's just putting it right there, so we the world knows, and we don't.
That card alongside this card seems cool because it's like a sweet dig, set up my whole situation card, and if you flip it off this, you just draw 3, which is dope.
Like what's something that's cool is that this is the first time we've had Cascade spells since the Maelstrom Wanderer Plane Chase deck.
Yeah.
Right. So
I mean, I think also the other thing here to consider is like obviously these cards are not going to be legal in Modern or in Historic, but the format that we have played a lot of in our time, which is Highlander Gauntlet, is the question is would you play this in a Highlander Gauntlet deck? Because that's the power level we're talking about, right? That's a little more powerful, but it's still the same conversation. And I feel like you would play this in a Highlander Gauntlet deck.
Yeah, especially in like blue green where there's ramp spells or something like that in Rug that I have. The other thing is there is an opportunity, right? Like us talking about these cards. Modern Horizons is around the corner. Modern Horizons 2 is around the corner, and Modern Horizon 3 is coming out after that. And I would actually be surprised if there weren't some cards from this set as plants for Modern Horizons 2. Like if I'm Wizards, right, like including, some of these cards in that just works. Not the ones with partner, but some of the other ones. And then on top of that, they could just do a historic anthology that includes this card on Arena tomorrow.
Yeah, that's a cool idea. I would love to see this in historic. I mean, this seems appropriately powered for historic in a really fun way, actually.
Next card is Ghost of Ramirez D. Pietro. 2 blue. Named after my family dog Pietro. Legendary creature Spirit Pirate. Ghost of Ramirez de Pietro can't be blocked by creatures with toughness 3 or greater. When Ghost Ramirez de Pietro deals combat damage to a player, choose up to 1 target card in a graveyard that was discarded or put there from a library this turn. Put that card into his owner's hand. Also, they have partner, but that's a little less relevant to the conversation on non-constructed. Now, this card's sweet. The fact that you can loot and then use this to draw that card.
Ghost of Ramirez de Pietro that you were talking about. Yes. Basically, the idea being that you could loot or any kind of a self-discard effect to get an advantage. This thing domes because it's a little hard to block, and then you get the card back. So it's like kind of turning the downside of looters into something that goes into your hand, or a self-mill gives you lots of card selection.
Right. Also a pirate, also a spirit. To spirit, extremely relevant creature type. Pirate, more so if other pirate cards that were in this set were brought into other worlds, or that more pirate themed tribal things continue, which I think is really cool. One of the things I really like about this set is kind of this leaning into pirate tribal again. And we got some characters that were from the Ixalan story that we didn't get cards for. All of that, Vraska's crew, and then one of the other captains that we didn't get to see now have cards, which is really cool. And then this being a spirit, obviously super relevant. This having kind of unblockable by things that could kill it in a fight, right? Like it can't be blocked by bigger things. And if it's a smaller thing, it's going to, like the worst thing to see is a 2/4 or a 2/3, I guess, for De Pietro. But otherwise, it can kind of get in there. And most of the time we'll be able to hit them. So you just have to be able to loot or mill, right? It's discard put there from a library. So you can mill yourself to, like Hedge and Crab, and this is sweet.
I think this guy feels like he's most well suited in a format of the power level of about historic. Hard to imagine him being highly effective in something more powerful than that. Maybe modern. I like the fact that he is a spirit, as you mentioned. He goes along nicely with our preview card, Ghostly Pilferer, which is sweet. You could discard a card off of the Pilferer to make it unblockable to get in for damage. Then you get the card back. Mm-hmm. That all seems very cool. So yeah, interesting card. Not overt, but cool. Definitely cool.
See, I thought you would love this card. I thought this would be more up your alley. It like is
I think it's really cool. I'm trying to think of like
card.
how to best take advantage of it in a competitive format. And the thing it has the biggest problem with in those formats is that it's a 3-mana creature that doesn't do anything when it comes down. That's the biggest problem with it, right? It's just it falls into that same category so many sweet creatures over the years have, which is that I actually think that this in Commander is much cooler. Like as a partner commander, I think this card is great.
Yeah. What do you know yet what you're building next week?
I don't. Okay. I have to look through the whole thing and get prepped up for it. But I'm definitely excited about it. I mean, I love. I had such a good time building the Rogues mill deck that last time. Mm-hmm. It's a really nice building challenge to kind of know what I have to build. So it should be great.
Next card is, and this is a card that I think I want to talk about also in Commander a little bit, because I think this is actually my least favorite card in the entire set. It's Hull Breacher. 2 and a blue for a 3/2 Merfolk Pirate Flash. If an opponent would draw a card except the first one they draw in each of their draw steps, instead you create a treasure token. I think that Wizards needs to stop printing cards that do this with wheels. I think that this card should have read, if an opponent would draw a card off of an effect that they control, except for the first one they draw in each of their draw steps, instead you create a treasure token. I think that's great. I think a card that hates on people drawing too many cards is good for Magic. I think that, and when we talk about the black one, I'm going to kind of talk about that there. My problem with this card is that you get to, like, if your wheels happen, it's just another way to wipe everyone's hand from the game, and it's become a relatively common and boring And not just because, Ben, you're doing this. This is something that you deal with in other places. Like, it's been problematic in the past, too. It's been problematic when it's been printed in the Legacy, right? Like, this, Leovold was problematic. Narset was miserable and was, like, problematic from a play feel experience in Modern. And, like, this kind of effect, I just think, needs to go away. And I think, like, moving it towards... Like, I think... Stopping people from drawing extra cards is good. I think that adding literally just if they control that effect, it would be good for Magic.
Yeah, I get you. I think the thing that I want to do here before I respond on Hull Breacher is that I would like to loop in the other card you just mentioned, Opposition Agent, talk about them at the same time because they have different effects but similar places in terms of the printing and the style, right?
Sure.
The things they harken back to. So the card Opposition Agent, which is 1 black and 2 colorless, another flash 3/2 creature, this one a human rogue. It's black too. You control your opponents while they're searching their libraries. While an opponent is searching their library, you may exile each card they find. You may play those cards for as long as they remain exiled, and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast them. So both of these are kind of templated to be in the style of like the Notion Thief type of effect. Mm-hmm. And they have... I think Notion Thief's probably the most played commander card that has like that type of feel.
Narset, I think, sees more play than Notion Thief. Just because it's one color. Like Narset being just mono blue versus blue black makes it able to be.
I think what I mean is these are as a flash creature where you can respond to an ability.
Yes.
Right? Because that's effectively what the idea here on these cards is. Because if they weren't flash creatures, if they were sorcery speed creatures or planeswalkers, they would have the same downside we just talked about with the last card, which is that they're 3-mana creatures that right when they come down, they don't do anything. But the fact that they're flash means that they have this reactive ability.
Right.
The fact that they're creatures has almost no bearing anyway. They're actually just spells that leave a body. And as long as there's no way to interact with that spell when you cast it, you get this enormous advantage by casting it.
Well, and if this read with the blue one, because I do want to address these differently because I have very different opinions between the two.
Okay.
With the blue one, if it was until end of turn, also no issue. A little bit of an issue. It kind of still sucks because you could still for 6 mana wheel people, but then you're playing 2 cards that you have to get together, and it has to happen on the same turn, and it has to be at sorcery speed. Like all the things work a little bit better to make it less powerful. But the fact that this like sticks around, you wheel in Commander, you draw your 7 cards, and then also get 15 mana or more than that, right? You get 21 mana if you have 3 opponents.
I gotta tell you though, on that subject, the big difference that I see here, and this is something I've learned by playing Mana Drain and Commander as much as I have now, is every once in a while that gets you something crazy, and it's like really, really good. It's exactly played correctly at the right time. But often it's like you don't have exactly what you need to go along with that effect. So having all the extra mana, and granted, I know it's different that expires versus the treasures that don't. But even so,
you draw 7 cards in that situation. Right? Like when you mana drain someone, they just lose a card and you have whatever cards you have in hand. So sometimes that mana doesn't work for what you have in hand. With Hull Breacher, you draw 7 cards and you get 21 treasure tokens that you can save for later.
You're saying that if you do it off of your own wheel or whatever.
Yeah, if you wheel a fortune with Hull Breacher in play, that's all I'm talking about. I mean, if you just do it to someone regularly, it's fine, right? It's good. It's really good, but my issue with the card isn't that it does that. My issue with the card is in concert with wheel effects and time twister effects, which are what this card will be played with. Like that is what's going to happen. And I think that's where it's problematic.
I think this card's less problematic than you think, actually. I think Narset is more problematic. And Narset is a bigger problem because it's a planeswalker. And this is a problem because it has flash, so you can wait and you can end of turn do it to go into your windfall or your wheel or whatever. But I also think that it's a creature with 2 toughness. So like the things you're talking about in general, you have to have protection for your creature as well as the effect. So people can't just kill a 2 toughness creature in response. I'm not saying that I think, but I agree with you. I think that effect is not great.
Significantly less. Individual creature removal is also significantly less played in Commander than like, I would say a Planeswalker is actually easier to kill because you have 3 different players that each have an opportunity just to attack it with 3 creatures that they have. Versus this, which the only way to get rid of this is if I have a board wipe or targeted removal or somehow convince it to block and or attack me. I
totally hear your concern about this card. Yeah. I think the thing I want to talk about with these cards the most, because I would say that in general, I agree with you. I don't think that having control of that effect and wheeling people out of the game is something that's that positive for the Commander format. I think in general, it's a fun, novel effect here and there. But if it happens too often or it's not in CDH, I think it definitely makes the gameplay experience worse. When it happens to you, it's not fun.
I think even in CDH, it's problematic. And in there, I think it's the same way that I hate Blood Moon in Modern, right? Like, it's not too powerful for that format. That format deals with more powerful things, but I do think it's miserable. And I think like Blood Moon is not too powerful that it's ever been dominant in Modern in a way that's problematic, but when it's good, it makes games less fun. And I think that this has a similar issue. And from a game design printing perspective, I think it's a mistake. And then on top of that, I think this is just like a card that people are going to jam in commander decks, and it's going to be like mass land destruction eventually. Like this type of effect should just be avoided in general, because I think we're now at a point where there's too many cards that are like unfun and powerful that they're just not going to ban them. So I just would rather not play against this card in the long run. It'll be cool the first time someone does it. And that's my point. Like Wizards should not print cards that do this like this. Now, because we don't have touch, unless you have anything else you want to say on Hull Breacher.
I was just going to say that Hull Breacher and the other card that we just mentioned a second ago, I would like to talk about them in Eternal formats a little bit more, because I think they have a totally different implication there. So
sure. Can we keep Hull Breacher and Opposition Agent separate? Because I have a whole different conversation on Opposition Agent, but I do think
Sure.
Okay, so Hull Breacher in Modern, in Legacy, in those formats, I think is dope. I would love to see Hull Breacher in Modern. I think that card would be really cool there. I think in Legacy, it gets a little Leovold-y. Like Leovold was already a problem, and I know they like didn't deal with it very well. This is worse than Leovold, which I think we can agree on.
Worse in the sense that it's not as powerful, or a worse, more problematic effect.
Not as powerful. Like I think I think in Legacy can handle this card. I think this is a fair Leovold to have in Legacy. I think it's going to be good there, but like you getting treasures versus drawing cards off of Brainstorm, you like is less kind of what you were saying with Mana Drain, right? It's less going to be about time twisting people out or Wheel of Fortune,
especially in those Eternal formats where having a lot of mana is a lot less significant.
Right. Like, well, what are you going to do? Cast your 3 1-drop spells in Store? Maybe it's really cool as a sideboard card, or Ad Nauseam Tendrils. But like, yeah, I don't know. I think, and then Vintage. This card could be the best card ever printed or not. I don't know. I think the other card is maybe problematic for Vintage. I think that's the one community where I've heard people be like, "This is terrible." But
I guess my one thought on that is, in terms of it being less powerful than Leovold. So I think in a vacuum, the answer is yes, right? Like Leovold is a 3/3 for 3 that has like the multiple abilities attached to it, but it also costs 3 different colors. This card costs 3, leaves you with the 3/2 body, only costs 1 colored mana, counters a spell effectively, because if you're playing this in response to like if it's like a Brainstorm, great. But if it's in response to like a Serum Visions even, right? Like you're saying counter your spell. So my card doesn't draw me a card, but it gets me a Lotus Petal. So I draw a Lotus Petal, and I'm left with a 3/2. So unless you have interaction for my spell when it comes into play, which you could if you want, but you're going to waste a card then, that's a haymaker of a card. Like that's a 3/2 creature that counters a spell and draws you Lotus Petal. That's pretty good. And it has flash. Like Leovold is awesome, but you have to have 3 colors. It's legendary, and it doesn't do anything immediately when it comes down, right? It just means it restricts your opponent.
Sure, but like because it has a protective ability where that you can't trip no matter what. I think it comes into play and does something pretty immediately in a format where Brainstorm is the most played card. I think getting a treasure is worse than drawing a card too, right? Like you not drawing a card and me just getting mana is not as good generally. But I agree this card is really good. I think it's less problematic than Leovold, but we'll find out. And I am not one to attest to have any in-depth knowledge of what Legacy is looking like and what it needs. In Modern, though, and Historic even, I think this card's really sweet. I think that's actually the place I wish this was printed into. This is a Modern Horizon card. Sounds really cool. And I could see it being a Modern Horizons card. The other complaint that I'm remembering, and that's a card for both of these, I think this should have been a red card.
Oh. Because you wanted to go alongside Dockside just in terms of theme and flavor?
It's like it's making treasures, it's making mana. Like, why is blue ramping in this way? Like, it's stealing card draw, which feels red because it's like anti-blue. There's like a lot, like it wouldn't be a merfolk, right? It would be like a goblin pirate or something. But like otherwise, I think like it feels like a red card to me, like a lot. Even if you added my template, it feels like a red card to me, which I think is what I would do differently with it.
I think it's a cool card. I think it's too powerful. It's definitely too powerful for Historic. I think this card would be insane and problematic in Historic.
I guess my point, my issue though, stealing card draw isn't as relevant. People aren't playing brainstorm effects all the time in Historic, right? Like it's relevant. There are effects, but this is like more matchup dependent. It's not like Legacy where every player is playing brainstorm. It's not like Commander where you can combo it with cards that are banned in these other formats, like Time Twister and Wheel of Fortune aren't legal in Modern or Historic or anything even close to that in Historic. So, and like I don't even know. I don't want to figure that out. The one that ends your turn when you cast it, I guess it's a stack effect, so you just make the treasures and they don't draw the cards, and then it ends, so you still get
Glorious
that.
End. Yeah. I think that the place that I can think of with this card being so good is just the number of times that you like end a turn in Historic and somebody opts, or the number of times that Curious Obsession is the key to the win, or the number of times that like Uro just gets there for someone. This card just coming into response to those effects just gives you, I think, such an advantage. Like turning off someone's Curious Obsession, honestly, in the decks that Curious Obsession is like the reason they win, is like enough to just win. Like they don't have a great way to answer your thing that can flash back in. So I don't know. I mean, I want to talk about the black one as well. I think this card's awesome. I think it's too good for Historic. It's just right for Modern, and I look forward to playing it in Commander for the reasons other than what we just said with Wheel Effect. So.
Go away. So least favorite card in the set for me. Now, what might be one of my favorite cards in the set, which is wild because people hate this card, and that's Opposition Agent. It's 2 and a black, human rogue, flash. You control your opponents while they are searching their libraries. While an opponent is searching their library, you may exile each card they find. You may play those cards for as long as they remain exiled, and you may spend mana as though it were a mana of any color to cast it. So what this allows you to do is if your opponent does anything that tutors, or searches for a land to put it into play, or ramps, you get to do it for yourself instead. And people are very mad at this card. They kind of look at it similar to the other ones. I think it's more of the issue with its relationship with fetch lands and ramp, right? They don't like that this flashes in and steals is like a land hate card. I personally think that cards right now, there's an argument that A, people don't like off-colored fetches, and so this removes fetch lands from the format, and B, that this allows kind of a really cool way to hate on tutor effects, which are like very prevalent in specific parts of the format, like in the EDH community, but the more casual you get, the less relevant it is. And then the last one it kind of hates is on rampant growth effects. But I would argue pretty far that one of Commander's flaws is that ramp is too good and card draw is too good, and tutoring is used too often in older formats. But specifically something that hates on ramp, I think is actually really good for the format. I think people need to be ramping less, and this does it in a way that discourages people to lean on it versus land destruction, right? Like that's kind of the best way to fight big ramp decks is to destroy all your lands, and that has more of a negative issue to me. And I think this does a really good job at hating on some of the parts of the format that currently are maybe a little too powerful in a way that's interesting and cool, while also just being like a good card, a cool card. Thoughts?
I think if you were to arrange the things that people do in Magic that are unfair, like generally, not in every deck, because there are totally weird, wild decks, but if you'd like to arrange them, it's like some combination of things that are taking advantage of tutors. Like in general, fetch lands allow the best version of dual lands that are legal in whatever format they're legal to make your mana really smooth and silky. And if it's not them, it's like your Terramorphic Expanses and your things like that allow you to play multiple colors and get those effects. Tutors make it so that you can, and obviously those are tutors, but general tutors allow you to access the things in your deck that you have one of or less of, or are the key to you winning. If you imagine a deck that is playing a bunch of basic lands in 2 colors, and all of the spells you're playing are just good spells, and you're just curving into them and drawing fairly and drawing more cards, and that's how you win the game, this card does nothing to you. Absolutely nothing. Right. It's right. The way Magic is sort of intended and was designed, the original tutor, the only and first one is Demonic Tutor, right? In that original set, that's the only one, I believe, unless I'm forgetting another one. So you mentioned rampant growth effects and, cultivates and things like that. I think if this steals your ramp and your deck can't ramp anymore, fine. It just means some of the cards you draw are dead. You don't play them. So you have to get there a little slower. But other than that, it doesn't do anything to hurt you. It just means you can't play a few of your cards. So some of the cards you draw are blanks. I actually think that in general, this card's pretty sweet. I think that the formats that it's the most like the most problematic in are the ones where the hyper competitive nature of the tutors in those formats will mean that whoever draws this card gets like just an outrageous advantage, right? Like we talk about CEDH. This card is such a haymaker in that format. It's not even fair. You talk about like playing this in Legacy, in Modern to some degree. Fetch lands, I think, being the biggest place that it matters there. But I don't think this card is unfair. I just think it's very powerful. It's more powerful than the blue one for sure.
Yes. It is more powerful than the blue one. I don't know if I agree with that, actually.
You think the blue one's more powerful?
The blue one is more applicable to more situations, right? Like as you said, the amount of times... So, like, I've played a lot of Aven Mind Sensor in my life. I don't think I've ever had a commander deck that didn't... I guess since 2010, I have not had a commander deck that did not have at least one Aven Mind Sensor in one of them, right? Like, I've always had a deck that had an Aven Mind Sensor in it. I've almost got it a few times. I've cast the card a lot. The card is on the edge of being cut regularly because it, like, so often misses.
Yeah. Yep.
You're so often like, oh, I'll hold this up and I won't cast anything this turn, and then I'll cast something else, or like I need to get this thing into play, I'll hold it up, and the turn that you play something is the turn they tutor or they fetch, or you would have gotten them, and then you're like, oh man, this card didn't do anything. It survives because every once in a while, like, it's a great flash 2/1 that you can strap an equipment to, and also is good at getting people once in a while, but it's not the most broken card, and this is better than Aven Mind Sensor.
By like a very significant margin. I mean, comparing these two cards is absurd.
I don't know if it's that significant. Like, evasive 2/1 flyer that prevents people from searching their library versus a 3/2 flash that you get that one thing. This is better. Yeah, I'm not saying it's not better, and it's in a better color combo.
Think about what you're
worlds better. Because no, you draw one card. I mean, maybe if you tutor, if you get them on a demonic tutor, great. But like, they are cards that are going to be dependent on what your opponents are playing versus Hull Breacher, right? Like, I guess my point more is that Hull Breacher, I think, is just always good. People are always drawing cards. The Magic is built on people adding extra card draw effects to their decks versus this card, which I think is very good and it's very powerful. And in CDH, I think both of these cards are immediate staples. I think this card does more to change how people build their decks. Like, I don't think Hull Breacher is getting people to play less card draw. I think this gets people to play less searchable ramp, less fetch lands, and less tutors because it's so much more punishing. But I think in the long run, it ends up not being as powerful because of that, I guess. It's.
I mean, I'm just thinking about the fact that, like, so best case scenario, when you play Aven Mind Sensor in Modern, best case scenario, your opponent blanks on a fetch land or something else, I guess, like a Eldritch Evolution into a combo or something like that, right? Like something like that. But usually it's you're hoping to blank them on a fetch. They strike out. They don't get a land. This card, literally, you play this in the exact same situation and you get a land 100%. If you play this in the same situation that is most common in Modern, you're just going to get their land. It's going to be a 3/2 that loses them a life and ramps you a card. And if it's in a situation where they're playing anything of like real significance, you'll get like a total haymaker. And now, because it's for the rest of the game, it's not this turn, correct? All their fetch lands are dead cards. So if they can't kill this card, it means that 40% of the cards in their deck.
The later half is Aven Mind Sensor does too. The only thing that is different is you get the card.
Except that Aven Mind Sensor, if you want to take a chance and burn it, you might just hit a land that works for you. It's happened to me plenty of times, right? Like,
yes, that happens if they're going to lose and they need to cast something that turn, I guess, and you can do that. But for the most part, you are, and especially in the world that we're talking about, which is Commander, you don't. You like aren't going to risk the top 4 cards of you being a fetchable land. This, and even in like older formats, I think that's less likely. I would say that is a risky. I mean, you do it if you're going to lose, right? Like, I either fetch here and I win, or I don't, or you kill me. I am not saying that this isn't better than Aven Mind Sensor. This is a better card than Aven Mind Sensor, but I think the play pattern is the same. And the play pattern with Aven Mind Sensor is if I'm that guy that's
what you're saying is that if I'm that guy that's playing that 2-color deck that hits my curve, this card is just that card that you wanted to be sweet, but actually is just a 3/2 with flash that doesn't do anything for you. and you might hold it all game hoping I do something and kind of construct a strategy to have it open, but never get there because I'm just playing a deck that doesn't care about that.
Right. Like between the two of them, once they're in play, they are kind of the same card, which is I am greatly discouraging you from ever searching your deck. And so the cards that you have that search your deck are dead cards. The one time you get them with it, this is definitively better, and you can get some insane plays, especially in older formats, but people weren't writing letters home about how dope Aven Mind Sensor was in CDH. It's good. It's a good card. It's a played card in CDH, and this card is better than that card. I just don't think it's that... I don't think it's that insane of a card, and people are freaking out about this card, right? Like people are threatening to quit. It was when this card was previewed, literally like the internet blew up in a problematic way because that's what the Magic community does, and I think it was not in any way earned, especially when Hull Breacher was printed. I think that card is way worse. But Opposition Agent I think is dope. I'm really excited to play with it. I think it does healthy things to the format, not negative things. Two last comments, unless you have something else.
No.
The first one is I would just say don't play this card until after COVID. Or if you're playing web stream Magic. It's a very, very difficult card to deal with unless you're playing in a group where every single one of you has deck lists that are accurate. Do not play with this card in paper stream Magic. It doesn't work correctly.
Yeah, it seems horrible.
The other thing is the controversy with the blue one, which is I thought it would be red. This feels like it should be a white card. This was another one of the cards where people like, why does white keep losing things that it does? Like, this is Aven Mind Sensor, but slightly better within the realm of stuff that white does. White can exile cards from people's decks. It can tutor. It can have a flash thing that stops people from searching. This was a white effect an hour ago, and now it could have been black.
It could have been a white-black creature. Would have been fine.
So people, one cool thing, and I wish they did this. There was also the conversation of having like a cycle of these, and if the blue one was red and the black one was white, you could have also done like a green one that if a token would come under play under someone's control, you get it instead, or a creature this turn. That seems a little too good. So token or +1/+1 counters and token, like a doubling Season Theft would have been cool. I really liked that idea. And then like gaining life is obviously a classic white or a black one where if they were to gain life, you gain that life instead and that kind of stuff. But that's everywhere. That's a standard card. Yeah, I don't know. I think like there was a cool opportunity to do some cool versions of this, and then the blue one ends up being kind of lame. And I think it would be better if these cards would be better if it was effects that they control, right? That's I think where I'm at the most, where it's like, yeah, let's and that effect exists. There are cards that deal with that. So like Ashiok, for instance, it like doesn't let you. Ashiok doesn't turn off the 1 mana you tutor and they tutor effect because it's an effect you control.
Yeah, of course. Ashiok, the whole idea with that one being that if they cast their own thing, it screws them, but if you path them, they can still search.
Correct. I think they should have templated these cards. They should have templated these cards the same way. In fact, these effects should be templated that way moving forward. I think it would be better for Magic. Do you want to go over just random other cards, or do you want to go over the third controversial card from this set?
I think because we're being a little bit long-winded, let's make sure we get to that card. I think let's just do it. And then whatever else we get to tonight is great. And cool. I think, yeah, go for it.
Jeweled Lotus, 0 mana, artifact. Tap, sacrifice Jeweled Lotus, add 3 mana of any one color. Spend this mana only to cast your commander. Conveniently, for time, this card is not playable in any format that does involve a commander. So Brawl, Oathbreaker, Commander, Spark, anything with commanders, that go for it. But people are very angry about this card. People did not like it. What are your thoughts? I have thoughts, but I would like to hear your thoughts first.
I wasn't that upset about this card. I read it, and to me, it felt like, okay, so this card is better than Sol Ring on turn 1 in a commander deck. It is, because most of the time, if it's in that particular deck, your commander is going to probably come down on turn 1, or maybe a turn faster, right? Maybe it's a 5-drop, so it'll come down on turn 2. Like, whereas Sol Ring is 2 extra mana every single turn, so you're going to get 4 mana on turn 2 sustainably. And also Commander is this format where you have, generally speaking, 3 other players. So if you play your commander like on turn 1, somebody's just gonna be like, okay. The first chance any of us get, kill it, because like he spent all his resources on that card. They're speaking about me doing it. So I think it's really pushed and cool, and probably opens up some commander decks, especially in the CEDH community, to being that much faster. Like this is a staple in every CEDH deck forever now. It's 100% played. I can't imagine, unless it's the 5-color deck or something where this card doesn't do that much for you. But in general, like I don't look at this card and think like this does that much for you, other than the one thing everybody knows you have anyway. And if you get it out really fast because of this card, you'll be a target faster, which is already what happens in EDH and Commander if you go really aggro with your strategy. You just die really fast. Mm-hmm. So like I think it's a cool splashy thing. It harkens back to Lotus, but like I can't see what people are so upset about. Like really what this actually represents to people.
Yeah, I agree with you. I get where people are upset. I understand why people are upset, because they think this is an auto-include in every commander deck, kind of what you said it would be true in CDH, which I actually disagree with. They think that like this becomes another Soul Ring where you have to play it. It's $150 on SCG when this first got previewed. I don't know what it is now. I think it's probably calmed down a little bit. It is a like Josh Lee Kwai in a thread with Blake Rasmussen, who works at WotC, had like a good point on like the problem with this card is its swinginess, is that it creates, when it is good, it makes games less good. Because it's just like that one person is ahead, they're able to play the commander for Urza gets to play their commander on turn 1. Great. And that game now just like didn't exist and we wasted our time. So in that sense, I guess, I think this card is just not that insane. I don't think like people aren't playing Dark Rituals, right? Like unless you're like taking advantage of it, which fine. Like if you're playing an artifact deck that can take advantage of this, I guess this is a really, really good card in that deck. As soon as this card isn't worth $150, I'm going to buy them for the decks that I own that are artifact themed. The Malfagors, I built a new Silas Ren Rebek deck. Those will probably take advantage of this pretty well. I posted dope lists that were Maga the Traitor, Jeweled Lotus, and Salvaging Station lists that you make, if there are, I think it was like 45 creatures in play, you win the game. Or you just like one shot kill a person and then you have a 45 in play. With this card, any commander that has like an X effect is like really dope. The green Vathaloth, whatever. I don't know how to say that guy's name. The kicker. Which X, one? You make X 1/1 sapling tokens. All saplings get +1/+1.
Oh yeah, I don't know the name.
Violoth, I don't know. I'm never gonna say that card. It's right there. Thanks, Marshall. Like Salvaging Station with this card is really dope because every time a creature dies, you can play the Jeweled Lotus. You can put the Jeweled Lotus back in play, and then sack it to make mana. And for your commander, as long as your commander has an X in its converted mana cost. Gadwick, Thassa's Oracle on this is really dope. So I think that's cool. Like there are other cards that do dumb shenanigans, and that involves a 6-mana artifact you have to have in play, and it only works in 4 decks. I guess there's like 8 decks, but like 4 single color decks. And to your point on multicolor creatures or commanders, I think if you're playing more than 3 colors, this card is bad unless you're artifact themed. Like if you're like playing, I guess if you're playing partners that are 1 color partners, one of the new ones, it's a little bit better. But like gold cards don't, like if this card is only getting you to get a discount on your commander tax, this card's bad. So if this isn't just able to cast your commander or help you cast it on turn 1 or 2, it's not really worth it anymore. And now you're playing with a dead card. And as you said, you're down a card, right? Like you're down a card that's pretty significant unless you have a way to take advantage of it. I think it's good. I think it's fine. I think the times that it is good, there is a good argument that maybe it's unfun. And that's a fair argument to have. But I think it might become a little too much of a staple in CDH. Like I think it's a little close to every CDH deck might need to play it, especially with all the new partner cards. But I think
that's the biggest problem, to be honest with you. I think it's more to do. I think that's way more of a problem. Those decks are so low to the ground. They're so tuned to win fast. I mean, think about something like a Najeela that's already an incredibly fast, incredibly powerful deck. This just casts Najeela and this Najeela and a mana creature on turn 1, and you're so close already. You're already so close to winning the game at that point.
Sure, and Urza, it's problematic. I guess with those decks it is, and that's a problem. But I don't think Like if I'm playing a Tim Thanos Thrasios kind of deck, I don't know if I play this card because it doesn't get either of my commanders into play ever. If I'm playing this in Blood Pod, I don't know if I would play it there either, where like my 2 commanders, this doesn't really help. I guess it kind of helps because it helps get the red-green one, which I'm forgetting the name of. It's right there. And the red-green one that when trample 2/2 whenever it does damage, make that many tokens. But that's like kind of the worst one. You're playing that mostly because you need another thing to attack with Tana, makes Tana tokens. Like I don't care if that's in play on turn 1, and I've just discarded a card that I'd much rather be a hate card. So like I think your deck has to be a very low color quantity, which in CDH is rare already. Or rarer. I don't know. I think a regular commander, this card is just fine. I think like
I think this card is like I think people overreacted to this card. I think way more so than those other 2 we talked about. Those other 2 are way more problematic to me. This card is like very cool and interesting for its format. It might prove to be too powerful. If it does prove to be too powerful and it gets banned, okay, but like I don't think it's gonna happen. I still kind of feel like in general, 100 cards, 1 copy per deck. Like if it's the kind of thing where it's an auto include in every single Magic deck and people are unwilling to switch it between their decks or play with proxies in the decks if they have one, just like then I can see people being annoyed because there are some people who are purists that are like, I will never switch cards. I will only play with the cards I have in my decks.
Right.
And that's a problem because even now with this card depleted, it's still over $100. And this is going to be in most commander decks. This will be in more decks than it's not. So I see that.
I guess that's my point, that I don't think it'll be in more decks than it's not. I think people will realize that it's not. I think like it's better than Black Lotus and worse. Sorry. It's better than Dark Ritual, but worse than Mana Crypt. And
yeah, I mean, it's kind of the thing where True Name Nemesis didn't end up in every single blue deck that ever was played in the history of Commander forever, right? Mm-hmm. But when it was printed, it was like, what? This card, it's just a card people play.
Yeah, I meant Mana Vault, not Mana Crypt. Sorry, I think it's worse than Mana Crypt. It's worse than Mana Vault. It's better than Dark Ritual. Yeah. And I think in with True Name Nemesis, I think the problem with True Name Nemesis was the play style was more toxic than this is, and this is toxic. I don't know. It's fine. I think it I would rather they had not printed it. Fine, but they did. And I think it's not nearly as bad or as scary as people were saying it was. And I think long run, it's going to just be cut from a lot of people's decks. I think they're going to put it in there because they think they have to. And then they're going to draw it a bunch of times and it's going to do nothing. Plague Reaver, 2 and a black. Creature Beast, 6/5. At the beginning of your end step, sacrifice each other creature you control. Discard 2 cards, sacrifice Plague Reaver. Choose target opponent, return Plague Reaver to the battlefield under that player's control at the beginning of their next upkeep.
The play pattern on this card reminds me, even though it's not, it reminds me of the effects that I was looking at a lot when I was trying to build Hunted Handsome all those years ago. With Necro, whatever the hell that black 3-drop was, the destroyed creatures equals to counters on it. All those types of effects of switching control, destroying all things. Now, this is not that because this card has a few really, really distinct and very unique details built into it, which is it's a 3-mana 6/5 that immediately you can discard 2 cards to do great effect. So it's just a 3-mana creature that you can discard 2 cards probably for advantage to give this to your opponent during their upkeep, mind you, to destroy all their creatures. It can't attack that turn. And then what? You can bounce it back to your hand. There's a bunch of stuff this card does. The play pattern on this card is really sweet.
If you're playing a deck that this is your only creature, the play pattern for this card is 2-3 mana, or you're playing Lingering Souls or something, something that if you have to sacrifice it, whatever, you play this, you discard 2 cards, and then your opponent on their next turn has to sacrifice. It's a board wipe, right? They wipe their board and they have a 6/5. It does have haste. They can block with it, or they can discard 2 cards to give it back to you. It doesn't have haste, but they've had it from their turn to be it. And what the wipe their board, you have to give it to them at that before they would have it.
No, it's beginning of their upkeep.
At the beginning of their upkeep. So if you give it to them on your turn, they upkeep with it, sack other creatures, then they have a 6/5.
No. Discard 2 cards. Sacrifice Plague Reaver. Choose target opponent. Return Plague Reaver to the battlefield under that player's control at the beginning of their next upkeep.
Oh, got it.
Yeah, I'm telling you. So there's no haste on this card. So it comes in on their turn.
Yep.
They can't attack, and it wrecks all their creatures, but I believe it's at end of turn when it wrecks them all.
Yes, yeah. So you play it, you sacrifice it, you do the thing. You don't even have to sacrifice your creatures. They get it.
Yes.
You had to discard cards to gain value. And oh yeah, so this card's even better than I thought it was. I love this card. This card's so dope. I thought that was already good.
The play pattern on the card is very, very cool. It definitely means that if you have control and your deck is built around this type of effect, you're going to be in business. Like they're not going to be able to use this to their advantage at all. It's set up with enough things going on that you can 100% do that.
Right. Like
which
worst case scenario, you play like the discard your cards game. Like they can discard 2 cards to not sack their board, right? They have an option in and out. Now, if they have a big enough board where they want to protect it, likely they don't have that many cards in hand, so you're getting good ones. They have to discard the cards. No, they can discard after drawing. Also, it's a 3-mana 6/5 if you don't have any creatures in play. If you just don't want to do that, you can just play this and have a 3-mana 6/5.
I see this card alongside Life from the Loam, and I'm just like,
yes. Yeah.
This is so sweet. In like a Jund Lands deck, like this is so sweet.
I will be playing this card in any format that is legal and I have the ability to play. Next card is Wheel of Misfortune. 2 and a red, sorcery. Each player secretly chooses a number 0 or greater. Then all players reveal those numbers simultaneously and determine the highest and lowest numbers revealed this way. Wheel of Misfortune deals damage equal to the highest number to each player who chooses that number. Each player who didn't choose the lowest number discards their hand, then draws 7 cards. So what's interesting about this is that this creates a weird game of who gets to get the Wheel of Fortune.
It's not a Punisher card, but it's a modality card where there's definitely different options. I think it's a cool card. I'm gonna be honest with you, it's a little confusing when you read the wording. It reminds me a bit of like some of the Will of the Council type of conspiracy type of cards, the way that they read.
Oh, to break it down without using the text, because I agree that it took me like 5 times of reading this. Basically, you and me, if we're playing 1v1, each pick a number over 0. Whoever picks the highest number takes that much damage. And then everyone but the person who picked the lowest number gets to Wheel of Fortune if they would like. Or no,
if there's 2 of
Wheel
us,
of Fortune, they have to Wheel of Fortune. So
if you play this and I pick 3 and you pick 2, I take 3 and you get a wheel.
No, you take 3 and you get a wheel and I get nothing, but I don't take damage.
Okay. So what happens to the person who picks the lowest number? Nothing?
Nothing. So if I pick 0, I don't take damage, I don't get to wheel. So
okay.
if this is a 4-player game, player A pays 5 life, player B plays 4 life, player C plays 3 life, player whatever plays 0 life. Player who played 0 life doesn't get the wheel, doesn't take any damage. They just opted out. And anyone can pick 0, right? We could all just say, I don't want a wheel. I'm going to pick 0, whatever.
And the other players take 5, 4, and 3, and they all wheel.
And they're all trying to figure out how much life am I willing to pay to be able to wheel. But while also making it low enough that I'm less than someone else so I don't take any damage. And then only the person with the highest number takes damage, and only the person with the lowest number doesn't draw 7 cards and discards their hand.
Oh, gotcha. So in a 2-player game, it will just be the lowest person, nothing happens. The highest person takes damage and draws cards. But if there's 3 people, that same situation happens, but the person in the middle will just get a wheel.
Right. Like if I have this in Modern, in Legacy, in Storm, I pay, and my opponent is tapped out, I just, in my Storm chain, pay 19 life, expecting to then, with the extra 7 cards, being able to Wheel of Fortune for 3 mana in that format, one-sided, be able to win. Right? Like that's the like...
then you're paying the most, 19. Then you're paying the most life,
and then I get the Wheel of Fortune. I can guarantee that Wheel of Fortune.
But you also lose life. But you also will take the extra point, won't you?
Yeah. Well, that's I'm saying I win that turn.
But read the card.
If I pay 19 life,
when does the damage happen?
When I Wheel of Fortune. So I'm at 20. I pay 19 life. I'll end up at 1 life in Wheel of Fortune.
But you're
playing Storm, so I just cast all the spells I drew. I cast them.
The highest number to each player who chose that number.
Yeah.
No, because you'll pay 19 life. Oh, I see what you're saying. 19 is the amount of damage you'll take. You're not paying 19 life. 19 is the damage you take.
Yeah. Sorry.
The way you just said it, I was mixed up. Okay. You pay 19. You'll take 19 damage. You'll wheel. That'll be what
19.
happens.
I take 19 damage. I wheel.
Yes.
My opponent doesn't pick 19, or if they do, I get to just grape shot them off of one spell. Right?
Yeah.
So that's like the go all in game plan. If you're worried about having a guarantee on here, this is the card you play to make sure you win that turn. If you want to go that route, or you can always do the thing like if you're playing in an aggro deck in Burn, casting this on turn 10, like on a turn where you have more life than them. Right, you're against a control player. You've done 12 damage to them, or you've done 6 damage to them. They're at 14. You're at 20. Pay 15 life. They like have to let you wheel, and now you're getting a one-sided wheel, which is pretty cool. In multiplayer, this card's sweet, right? Like you get to play that fun game. That I'm gonna put this in a bunch of decks. I really like it. It's cool.
I think it's sweet. Yeah, I'm on board.
Next card is Court of Bounty, 2 green enchantment, and this is our Monarch card for the day. When Court of Bounty enters the battlefield, you become the Monarch. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may put a land card from your hand on the battlefield. If you are the Monarch, instead you may put a creature or land card from your hand onto the battlefield. This card's sweet. It lets you draw cards. It's 4 mana draw a card, enchantment, that on your upkeep you get to either draw another, or you get to put a land into play, or you get to put and Elmercool into play.
Yeah, this card's really powerful. This card has big time, I think, eternal applications. Obviously, I actually think this card getting printed into Modern is probably fine.
I think it's on the line, but it's I agree. I think it would be okay.
Yeah, think about the number of things that in Modern affect this, right? So number one, because I believe, is the Monarch damage or combat damage?
I believe it's combat damage.
If that's the case, so you're in green, you play this, right? Your opponent has to be able to get through to steal Monarch back from you. You've already drawn a card. So 4 mana green to draw a card, which is, fine. Totally reasonable rate.
Combat
then
damage.
there are go ahead.
It's combat damage.
Yeah. So then in blue, there's plenty of effects that bounce things. So, cryptic commands and things like that. Mm-hmm. In other colors, there are enough effects and things, Night of Autumns and effects like that are sort of incidental that take care of court. And at the end of the day, you also have to have this plus the creature that you want to win the game with. Yeah, it's a sorcery speed enchantment that can easily be countered. I think this card to me feels like all the things that like Summoning Trap or that type of effect want to do, but just in a slightly more efficient, a little bit more sound way. And I like the fact that it has the added application of just this draws me a card, and also I put a land onto the battlefield, even if I don't have the thing I need.
Right.
Like, it's a value engine. It's a really sweet value engine in like a big mana green ramp deck.
I think I would play this card maybe in as a sideboard card, also out of Titan Titan decks, because you can play this kind of as your Azusa. Out of the sideboard as a card draw engine against control players, so that if they answer your Titan, you're getting to draw a card every turn off of being the Monarch, and then once in a while you get to play a Titan. They don't apply pressure, so you don't have to worry about losing the Monarch. I think that the limitation on this card is that it just is a 4 mana enchantment that does actually nothing. It draws you a card, but it does nothing the turn it comes into play on turn 4. So I
think the balance on this card is actually pretty badass. I'm pretty stoked on it. It feels kind of exactly right for what it is. It doesn't feel like this card would be oppressive. It just feels like if a deck that was already rolling downhill and doing pretty well played this, you'd be like, ugh, how do I win against this?
Mm-hmm.
But it's not unfair.
Yeah. No, I really like it. I think it's a really cool card. The last cards we're going to talk about today. And before we do that, I do want to thank our patrons. Thank you guys. You're the best, and girls. And we do, for people who don't know, what's cool about our Patreon is that we have a raw feed version of the episode that has all of the arguing, that all of the swearing, but also almost always a 10 to 20 minute pre-discussion on things that aren't magic related. Like today we talked about what our favorite action movie in history is, plus I then trivia'd Ben on some what years did movie come out game. A couple weeks ago we did favorite chips. A few weeks before that we did favorite candy bars. We've done movie conversations. It's really awesome. I definitely recommend it. And everyone on Patreon gets, I think it's $5 and above patron level. So it's a really cool thing that is available on our Patreon. And then definitely also please, as I mentioned at the beginning of the thing, we have a schedule now. The schedule for the episode has changed. So this episode now comes out on Mondays for audio only and video on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. Please comment which card you're most excited about, which legendary creature commander decks you want, because we're going to talk about those next week. So if you can comment your favorite legendary creature that you want to build a commander deck off of, we can then talk about it next week on the episode. But if you watch the episode Mondays now, and then Fridays are when hot takes come out, which is when the episodes used to come out. And then Monday evenings is when we do our live stream for Commander on twitch.tv/KessWiley. It's now just on Twitch because we'll then release the video on Wednesday onto YouTube. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday, content every week. And then a live stream every Monday on Twitch, twitch.tv/KessWiley. Ben is also streaming.
I am. I've been doing it actually every Wednesday. I took close to a month off, but I've been back at it the last couple weeks. Playing a bunch of stuff in Historic. I tried to build this one deck this one night. God, it was all like sideboard answer cards that I spent way too many wild cards on. It was so bad. But I played the rogue deck. I played the rogues deck and got all the way to Mythic, and then I was playing the Jeskai Super Friends deck with Gideon and Pacts for a while. That was really fun. I'm still working on something else. I just haven't figured out exactly what I want to build, but I've been having a great time doing it. So follow me there at twitch.tv/Ben Bateman streaming.
All right. So the last cards in today we're going to talk about, it's a cycle. It is the 9 mana sorcery cycle, including the green one, the red one, there's a blue one, a white one, and a black one. Soulfire, Eruption, Reshape the Earth. I don't have the black one and white ones down, I'm realizing. Marshall is thankfully putting it below us. The black one is called, drum roll, please, Ben, give me your drums. The black one, where is it? Is called Profane Transfusion.
All right, Profane Transfusion for the win. I love this one.
We have two more. Yeah. We got drum roll again. Got to get through the blue one. It's going to show up. The blue one is called Mnemonic Deluge. Mnemonic Deluge. Damn, that is a hard card to say, reading it out loud without thinking about what those...
Mnemonic Deluge.
Neither of those letters are said correctly. And then the last one is Triumphant Reckoning, add a white. So these 3 cards are 9 mana. They all ostensibly read in some way, you win the game. Though not
why are you saying these 3 cards? What is the reason?
These 5 cards. 5. Because I'm bad at counting.
I didn't know if you had only said the names of 3. I was like,
counting's for blockers, all right? They all have really cool effects. So let's talk about the first one, which I think is the one that is the most, especially in 2-player, but in 4-player even as well, the most I win the game. And that is Reshape the Earth. That's 6 green. Search your library for up to 10 land cards. Put them on the battlefield tapped, then shuffle your library. So you get your Valakut trigger.
In Modern or in any format like that. Now, granted, if this existed in Modern, why would you ever play this card? Like, Scapeshift is this card. It costs 4.
I agree with that.
Right? Like, this card is not good in the 1v1 formats. It's actually, I think, just cool and fun in Commander because... For this, I mean, you could Valakut, but in Commander, like Valakut, you still need to have up to 9 lands to be able to like get your Valakut and your Vesuva and your 7, mountains to kill one person. So you may as well play this card. There's no risk of any of the other stuff. So you probably play both in that deck. But to me, this card is just like this is in my big ramp deck that probably in all reality can get to 9 a lot easier than the other colors. I probably play this on like turn 6 or something and just kill someone.
So if I were to put this in Tamio, I can pretty much guarantee that I lock the game out. Not necessarily through like I'm not playing Valakut or like not through Feel of the Dead trigger, though I would probably find Feel of the Dead among the 10. I like that more than Valakut because it doesn't dictate what your other 9 cards have to be. But getting like this Glacial Chasm, Thespian Stage, Dark Depths, plus Maze of Ith, plus like a bunch of like 4 other lands that are all like so good utility lands that I'm going to be able to make it so I'm not going to lose ever again, and you are going to take a 2020 to the face is I think more where I would use this card, which Valakut also can do, right? Like Scapeshift also can do, but I think that's kind of where it plays in the space is like a second really big Scapeshift. The next one is the red one, Soulfire Eruption, 6 red. This is another one that it took me like 3 times reading it to really get a grasp on actually what it's doing. But choose any number of target creatures, planeswalkers, and/or players. For each of them, exile the top card of your library. Then Soul Fire Eruption deals damage equal to that card's converted mana cost to that permanent or player. You may play the exiled cards until the end of the next turn. So
what that means, just for you guys to understand, because I expressed to Alex before the show, I thought this card was kind of bad. It's all of the targets. So it's their planeswalkers, their creatures, and the players, which means that between the 3 players you're playing against in theory and Commander, that's like, I don't know, a ton. Maybe let's just say it's on average 5 per player. So you exile 15 cards, probably you kill everything, and other than players, obviously. And the cheapest things that do not flip and do damage are the easiest ones for you to cast.
Right.
So the scalable nature of it's pretty awesome. This is not a card. I don't think any card in this cycle will see any play in like a Modern or a Legacy even.
Correct.
But they're all very fun cards for Commander.
I think the white one could, and we'll get to that in a second. What's cool about this one is, like, I'm going to put this in Nahiri tomorrow, or like whenever these cards exist in my life. And because, like, I would even say even if the average was 3 cards per player, right? If I'm drawing 9 cards and doing random damage to each of those creatures and players in Nahiri, those 9 cards are like guaranteed to hit multiple 6 drops or more. Like 5 of those 9 cards are 4 mana and better. 4 of those cards are 10 mana or more. And so being able to just like, you get hit by an Eldrazi, you get hit by an Eldrazi, you get hit by a Eldrazi. The sad part is when you do this, if you don't cast them, they're exiled forever. So you want to be a little careful in that deck, but it just is going to be really, really sweet the first time I do it. But then beyond that, you get to play like the cards you get. You have until your next turn to play them. I think it's really cool. Then shuffle it. You may play the exiled cards until the end of your next turn, and you get your next turn to play them. That's the thing, where it's not the end of this turn.
Well,
or
you
the
need
next
it
turn.
because presumably casting this for 9, you're not going to cast any of them this turn.
Correct.
Unless they cost 0. But if they cost 0, you don't want to flip them. So there is that.
Right. The next card. I guess these went to my downloads now. Where did they go? I saved.
I've got the next one here. Right, so we've talked about the green one. We've talked about the red one. We'll talk about the black one now, which is black, Profane Transfusion, Sorcery. 2 target players exchange life totals. You create an XX colorless horror artifact creature token, where X is the difference between those players' life totals. Target includes yourself. So you get to switch the 2 life totals of the players that presumably have the highest disparity between their totals, and you get a giant creature to make up the difference. Mm-hmm. So if I'm at 4 and you're at 40, I get a 36 power creature. You go to 4, I go to 36. That seems awesome. It's a little bit narrow in terms of its effect. You don't get 3 copies of the creature. I think they should have given you a bigger, like, because sometimes the disparity in life totals won't be big enough. So that's the one thing about these cards, is that 9 mana is so massive that you really want to feel like when you play something for 9, you're probably going to win the game. Like, you might not in Commander. Sometimes you don't. Obviously, lots of spells cost a lot of mana, but 9's big. Like, You don't want to feel like I play something for 9 and then everybody at the table just like shrugs their shoulders. Like, you want to feel like when I play this for 9, it's kind of like end game a little bit. And I think this calls for a situation where the life totals are a little bit specific. Presumably, you have the low total is what this is especially good for. But if I just like switch 2 of my opponents from 10 to 40, now one of them has 10 and one has 40, but I still have 40. I mean, I kind of care. I guess you can play politics. Like, well, now kill him. He was the one who was the problem.
9 mana for a 30/30 is a pretty good rate, generally. I mean, it's not a good card. Like, you wouldn't play that.
Not really. Not if it doesn't have trample or flying or hexproof or something. Like, it's just a creature. It can get bounced or like.
I mean, they would never print a 9 mana 30/30. Straight up.
I don't agree with that at all. I think tomorrow they would do that.
Well, they just did. I mean, this kind of. I don't know if they would. There's nothing close to that.
1 green, 8 mana. Beast. 30/30. Uncommon. In the next set. Not surprised.
I think that is above and beyond. I don't like. So they've printed Merit Leash is a 2020. What's the life gain? The one that is equal to your life total. Sarah's Avatar is like historically the big one.
Totally. That's like 7 mana. There's like a lot of creatures that are big, but like if it has no abilities and it's just a giant creature, for 9 is a prohibitively high cost. Like, This is the only format where 9 drops even get cast. In Commander, are you telling me that if somebody cast a 9 mana 30/30, and I'm not saying this card, I'm saying just a creature, you would be scared at all?
Oh, I would be scared from the perspective of if I could not block it, I would die. But I agree that it would be fine. I agree that it would be fine.
I think you understand what I'm saying, though. Yeah. It doesn't feel the size of a creature anymore does not actually feel that scary. They could print the difference between a 30-30 and a 100-100 is like negligible in my mind. They're almost like the same thing.
Is this card? Well, the reason 30-30 I think is possible for them to print now that we're talking about it is because of the 40 life total, right? Like it's not like the only reason I think they would maybe not print that is if there are any cards out there that I'm not thinking of, but for sure might exist, which is like exile a creature card from your hand and gain life or do damage equal to its power, tough, something like that. Or like in your graveyard, you may like exile a card in your graveyard and make a XX equal to how big it is, and that costs 4 mana. Because a 4 mana 30-30 I think is too strong.
I think the card that would get printed, if we're being honest, is like black, 36. This card costs 1 less to cast for, basically subtract the cast and cost your life total kind of a deal. So if you were at 4, this would be a 4 mana 40-40. That card actually feels like it could exist, because if you could find some way to get up to 4 black on turn 1 and pay down to 4 life, you could get a 40-40. But like, that's the card. It's the sort of like Avatar of Hope effect. If you have a low life total, this card is cheaper.
And yeah, I'd be interested to see if anyone in the chat has a version of this card that exists. I'd love to or what's the best power and toughness you can get for rate on a card right now that doesn't involve any other cards other than just the mana you have.
Yeah,
cool. All right. But on the like me, if I'm at a low life total, I could kill someone with this card pretty easily, right? Like if I have a creature, but I'm at 5 and everyone's like, oh, it doesn't matter. He has creatures, but we're all at 40. I could just be like, switch life totals. I attack you. You're dead.
I think from the perspective of Commander,
40-40.
like the design of the card is super fun for that reason. Mm-hmm. The same reason that you can switch opponents' life totals, in the turn cycle to set up like you thought you were safe, but actually before it's your turn, you're no longer at 38. You're now at 7. You're going to die before your turn because I did this thing.
Right.
That like politic move for a 9-mana spell is pretty cool, and I think it fits perfectly into a set like this.
Yep.
Commander Legends, the whole idea of the set is like, let's print really cool splashy things that we haven't seen before.
Yep. Mnemonic Deluge, 6 blue, sorcery. Exile target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard. Copy that card 3 times. You may cast the copies without paying their mana costs. Exile Mnemonic Deluge. Interesting templating. I guess that's the way you have to say that. The fact that you copy the card 3 times before you cast the copies is like a weird way of phrasing it, but which I guess allows you to just get cast triggers if there's something that you want to cast. Now, what's cool about this card is if you can cast this card, you can cast all the other ones we've talked about.
True.
And copy it 3 times. Now that black card looks great. I guess it doesn't do anything because you're just switching back and forth. The red one's dope to copy it 3 times. This card's fine. I think like you can do something really dumb and silly with this. I'm probably like, it probably just wins the game. Like if we want to like think about it, there's probably a way just to win the game. It's casting a spell 3 times out of your graveyard for free. Seems like you could do something dumb. I'm not really thinking of what that is off the top of my head. I'm assuming there's some really expensive sorcery in the world that lets you go crazy here. What's the most?
I just think again, like if you're casting something that costs 9, there are lots of things you can chain it with to do something even more absurd than that.
Sure.
The only one of these that feels like it's not a 9-drop is the green one, because triple green invites ramp so completely. I guess none of them have more than 3 mana symbols of one particular color, so artifact ramp does get you these cards pretty fast. So there are situations where artifact ramp on the blue one that's more of a haymaker. We're going to talk about the white one in a second. I think probably blue and white have the largest haymaker effects in a non-traditional effect, because like black is, we just talked about, pretty narrow in terms of what it does.
Yep. And
red is insane. It's super, super, super good. But also if you're playing lots of things you can cast for cheap that ramp quickly, it's not as good of a card. Because like those are what you're flipping is things that you won't want to cast as much. So it does feel like white and blue both have the same ability of like, if I can cast blue on turn 5 after like sculpting my graveyard in some way, even if I just get the black one into my graveyard within 4 turns, and I copy it 3 times, and whoever has, 10 less life or something like that, now I get, 3 10/10s. I don't know. I mean, I think the blue one has, if you're going to ramp into it with artifact mana, I think the blue one could do some really cool stuff. There's like copying any spell in the game 3 times could do some pretty monster stuff.
Yep. And now the last one, which is Triumphant Reckoning. 6 white, sorcery, return all artifacts, enchantments, and planeswalkers cards from your graveyard to the battlefield. I think this is the most I win the game written on a card of any of these cards. I think it goes this and then green. You have to have a deck that's built to do it. Your deck has to be built to take advantage of this, but I can name a lot of different artifact self-mill decks or, Carador-like decks that if I just have the right things in my graveyard, I instantly win. And my deck is built to get those things in my graveyard. And I'm playing like green, white, black, so ramping into this isn't that hard. Or I'm in an artifact deck and I'm playing just every artifact ritual ramp spell under the sun, and this just gets me to that no problem. And now you're getting like a bunch of artifacts into play and like just doing crazy things with those. I think this card in a similar vein has just like, I win the game. Your deck has to be built around casting this card and like open the vaults, but there are decks that are built around casting open the vaults, and this is just a second open the vaults, which is another thing. To the extent that in a modern legal setting, this is a card that this is actually, of all of them, the one that I think would maybe try and see play.
It's the most over the top for sure. I think you would need to have a pretty sound strategy to make sure that what was in your graveyard was like not just good stuff, but like good stuff to the effect of like my opponent can no longer do something. Like it kind of would need to win you the game when you did it not in a probably because my things are good way, but in like I comboed these 2 things together and you can no longer play any spells way.
Yeah. I'm thinking like in an eggs deck, right? Where I'm able to ramp to 9, and then using just like Ghost Quarter on things, and I can cast this spell, bringing back all of the artifacts that I put in the graveyard this turn, producing a ton of mana, drawing a bunch of cards, can resack them, put this back on top of my deck, draw this, play it again, bring them all back, go off, right, and play Gravestorm or Grape Shot or whatever.
I did just think of, back on the blue one for a second, the idea of targeting Time Stretch is so sweet. You're getting six extra turns in a row.
Yes. Yeah. Extra time effects with that card's really good.
Say what?
Extra turn effects with that card are really good.
Just even if you just get Time Warp, it's really good, especially because like probably hitting your land drops means you can like flash it back and like get another Time Warp effect.
Time Stretch costs how much?
I think Time Stretch costs 10.
This is cheaper. This is cheaper than Time Stretch and takes an extra turn if you hit a Time Warp with it.
Yes, it's 1 cheaper if you have any of those effects in your graveyard, most of which exile, which is there, but temporal manipulation doesn't, Time Warp doesn't.
You can also discard them, right? Like if you're trying to do that.
Yeah.
Like Mizzix, which is the red blue commander that like makes things cheaper for how much experience you have. That card's like almost an auto include in that deck because it just is really good. And that type of effect, right? Like there are ways to make this cheaper, and there are commanders that will do that. I think so that's it. Those are next week. We're going to be talking about individual commanders. This was kind of just like some of the cool cards we thought we'd want to talk about in older formats. Some of the commanders we'll bring up in older formats. We had a few selected, but just because we talked so much about the Avid Mind Sensor pals.
The controversial cards. I mean, that's what everybody was talking about this week. Yep. It felt pretty important to talk about those cards. Yeah?
But once again, thank you all for listening and watching. Please subscribe. Please subscribe, comment, all these things. As I said earlier, if you're going to comment, please comment with what your favorite commander combos are going to be, some of the different partners, or just which commander you're most excited to play with. We want to hear them so we can make sure we talk about them next week. Once again, check out the Patreon, check out the raw feed. It's awesome. You get all the cool stuff. You get everything early. You get 7 days early now, or 6 days early. And then make sure to, thanks for watching. Follow us on Twitter. Follow us on Twitch. Check out the show every Monday night, every Wednesday on YouTube, and every Monday morning for this show, and every Friday for Hot Takes, and Wednesday for Ben Streaming. At Kess Wiley, at Ben Bateman Streaming, at Kess Wiley everywhere else, at Ben Bateman Media everywhere else. Thank you, Marshall, for all of the editing wizardry you're doing at the moment while we're talking to you because of time travel.
My last thing that I wanted to throw at you guys, because I mentioned it earlier today to talking to you, and it does matter to me, is that I have taken a little bit foray back into music. It's a thing that I've started doing a lot this last year. It's especially like as this year ends and I go into 2021, so I'm very excited about. And I'm playing my first show back in almost 7 years. It's a digital show. It's very small, but there's about 10 tickets at the time we're recording this left. They may be sold out at that point because I only made 50 available. But if you are interested in seeing the show, it's $5 and I'll be playing about 11 songs. It is November 21st at 7 p.m. I'm not going to put the link anywhere because it's like a weird website called Stage It that I don't have a URL that's good, but that's the deal. It'll be streaming there. I'm very excited about it. If you guys do want to see the show, you guys know where to find me on social. Tweet at me. I'll see it. I'll make sure you get a ticket if you want to see the show.
Do you have a link to share for it at all or no?
Yeah, I will put the link in the description. If you guys do want to buy a ticket there, and if it's sold out, like I said, send me a message or tweet at me so I can make sure that you do get a ticket, because I don't want anybody to not see it if you want to. But it's I'll be releasing an album in 2021, actually, my first full original album that I'm very excited about. So just wanted to say it because some of you guys don't know that that's something I do.
Is the album I have not a full original album?
It is, but that was a band I was in called Fight the Moon. This is a solo project.
Have you guys got
all of the music myself?
Can you get that onto iTunes, or is that available digitally?
No, Fight the Moon's long gone. I think the Fight the Moon Volume 1 is all available on YouTube from 2009 or something like that. But that's all like, we used to call it acoustic electro sex pop. This is like singer-songwriter.
You should just similar songs. You should just like get those songs onto TikTok or something and get them, as the kids say.
I'm gonna be playing at least one song from that record at this show. So.
Okay. For the what is it?
Which one? What?
The band's name?
Fight the Moon. Yes.
The Fight the Moon catalog fans
during the show, because it was a huge part of my life. I did that for almost 5 years. So nice. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Thanks, everyone. We'll talk to you guys on one of the days of the week that we talk to you now. And thank you, Ben.
Bye, guys.
This has been a production of Time Traveler Media, sending podcasts into the future.